Okay, let's dive into one of the most shocking and honestly puzzling stories in the entire book of Exodus, the golden calf. I mean, it's a moment of betrayal that seems to come out of nowhere, and it raises this one huge central question.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. The Red Sea literally just parted for these people. They've been rescued from 400 years of brutal slavery. And what do? Their first big move as a free nation is to melt down their gold and start worshiping a statue. It just doesn't add up. To really get why this happened, we have to understand the incredibly powerful emotion that was driving the whole thing.
Because this isn't really a story about simple rebellion, not at its core. This is a story about what happens when an entire people gets completely consumed by pure, paralyzing fear. And to be fair, their fear wasn't completely baseless. Moses, their leader, the guy who talked to God, had been gone for 40 days. 40! He went up a barren mountain with no supplies. Now, a person can maybe survive 8 days without water. So in their minds, after 40 days, Moses isn't just missing, he's long gone. He's dead. And this is where they make a critical mistake. Listen to what they say. This Moses, the fellow who brought us up out of Egypt, that's who they saw as their rescuer. They hadn't fully wrapped their minds around the idea that Moses was just the messenger. They thought he was the source of their salvation. So with him gone, they felt totally and utterly alone, abandoned in the middle of a vast desert. So this moment really exposes the two paths they could have taken. You see, fear just operates from a place of pure panic. It doesn't have a solid foundation, so it just grabs for the nearest, quickest solution it can find, completely forgetting all the miracles it just saw. Trust, on the other hand, well, that's built on a foundation. It gives you the ability to wait, to believe that even if you can't see the answer right now, one is coming. The Israelites, they chose fear.
And that choice to give in to fear, it spiraled really, really fast into a disastrous solution. Because when you're that terrified, when you feel that abandoned, there's one thing you crave more than anything else, a sense of control.
So why a golden calf? Of all things, why that? Well, it wasn't random at all. For 400 years in Egypt, the ultimate symbol of divine power they saw every day was the bull, which represented the god Amun-Re. In their panic, they didn't reach for something new and creative, they fell back on what they knew. They went right back to the symbols of their former slave masters, because at least it was familiar. And this gets to the heart of it. They were basically trading this mysterious, awesome, and let's be honest, kind of scary pillar of cloud. This god who was completely beyond their comprehension, for an idol. Something they could see, something they could touch, and most importantly, something they felt they could manage. It was a desperate grab for control. But the story is so much bigger than just one bad decision made under pressure. What's really happening here is a fundamental collision between two totally opposite ways of seeing God, the universe, and everything in it. Okay, so first you have the pagan worldview, which was, the default setting for the entire ancient world. In this system, there are no hard lines. The gods, people, nature, it's all just one big cosmic soup. The divine is inside the universe, which means you can represent it with things from the universe, like, say, a bull. But the biblical worldview comes along and introduces this radical, world-changing idea. The idea of a holy God. A God who is not part of the cosmos, but stands completely outside and beyond it. He's the creator, totally distinct from his creation. And that's why the second commandment is so absolute. You can't make an image of this God, because literally nothing in creation can contain or represent him. The calf was a direct violation of this brand new, fragile understanding. And this massive theological clash plays out in this incredibly dramatic confrontation between the two leaders at the center of the story, Aaron and Moses. First, you've got Aaron, the high priest, and when Moses confronts him, his excuse is just a masterclass in dodging responsibility. He basically says, well, they gave me the gold, I threw it in the fire, and poof, out came this calf, as if it was some bizarre magic trick that he had absolutely nothing to do with. It's a total and complete denial of his own failure to lead. And then you have Moses. What a contrast. God is furious, and he says to Moses, look at your people, whom you brought up. They're a mess. God is testing him, even offering to start over with just Moses. But Moses passes the test beautifully. He doesn't throw the people under the bus. He pushes back and reminds God, no, these are your people, whom you brought out. He stands with them and appeals to God's own character and his promises. So then Moses comes down that mountain, and his anger is just white hot. He doesn't just destroy the idol. No. He completely obliterates it. He burns it, he grinds it into dust, he mixes that dust with water, and then he makes the people drink their own sin. It is this brutal, visceral act meant to show them that you can't just explain away a failure like this. You have to deal with it, radically and internally.
So why are we still talking about this ancient story of fear and idolatry? Because the core struggle here is absolutely timeless.
And here is the most profound, tragic irony in this whole saga. At the exact same moment the people down below were frantically building their cheap little golden calf because they needed something tangible, God was up on the mountain giving Moses the intricate, beautiful, and deeply meaningful plans for the tabernacle, a divinely designed, tangible way for him to live among them.
So the lesson here is about the incredible cost of impatience. When our fear makes us unable to wait, what do? We create our own cheap substitutes. We end up worshiping our own creation, we misuse the gifts and resources we have, we put all our faith in human skill to give us a quick fix, and in the end, we build something that is a tragic shadow of what was actually being prepared for us.
And that, of course, leaves us with one last unavoidable question for ourselves. When we are the ones faced with silence, with uncertainty, with fear, when we feel abandoned in our own personal deserts, what are the familiar, controllable golden calves that we rush to build?